I'm Charlie Stern. This is Red Blue Talk. This is my internet channel where I talk about how politics and government impact everyday life. So this week, a couple of days ago, Thursday, September 2018, there was a Democratic primary. And actually, there were a whole bunch of primaries that day. But the one I want to talk about is this 34th Senate District in New York, where Alessandra Biaggi was successful in running an insurgent campaign against Jeff Klein, a longtime incumbent. So let's get into the details of it. So she's 32, he's 58. She's a lawyer, he's a lawyer, but he's been a legislator since 1995. She worked on the Clinton campaign. He's passed a lot of legislation: $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, marriage equality. Now, her grandfather was a member of Congress. Unfortunately, he was indicted and went to prison in a corruption scandal. Jeff Klein's background includes that he was the leader of the Independent Democratic Conference. This has been widely written about. It used to be a story that hardly anybody understood. I think hardly anybody doesn't understand it today. The IDC was a group of breakaway Democrats that the left didn't like because they perceived that they were conspiring with Republicans. On the other hand, the IDC viewed it as having formed a coalition government during a period of time in which the state legislature was extremely corrupt, and there was really no other good way to get anything done for Democrats at all. And as you can see, they did pass some what they perceived to be progressive legislation. Nevertheless, she won, he lost, and what I want to talk about in this video is how she was able to run a successful insurgent campaign. So let's get into the gory details. Step one is she built a counter coalition. So Klein had a coalition. It consisted of unions and Italian Americans, Albanians, Jewish people, older people, people all over the Bronx. It was a coalition that he built over the course of decades. She built a counter coalition in a matter of months. It consisted of unions, 32BJ, Transport Workers Union. She had some Teamster assistants and some political activists, indivisible groups, Democratic Socialists of America, Working Families Party. And by building that counter coalition, she was able to get a lot of feet on the street. Now, contrast that with Klein's coalition, which brought him an enormous amount of money. I think maybe the union support that she had were kind of people that could actually pick up the phone, knock on a door, distribute literature, and do things for you. And that counter coalition is what was the bedrock that made it possible for her to move forward successfully. Reason number two, Biaggi outspent Klein on Facebook. So there's a lot of talk about money and campaigns and how he raised over $2 million and she raised $500,000. But where did those dollars go makes all the difference. So she clearly outspent him on Facebook. And there's a quote from the New York Times on your screen. It's not crystal clear, but it might have been as much as 5-1. She was spending it on Facebook ads, Instagram, and video and photo production that produced amazing results. So let me just switch over and give you a quick look at what I'm talking about. So here is an example of a Facebook ad. Now, Facebook is now giving us a lot of information about election campaigns. As a result of what happened in 2016, the federal government really forced them into being a little bit more forthcoming about information about political ads. So if you click on this tab called Info and Ads, you can see the currently active ads. And then if you go into the ad archive, you can see all of the ads that every candidate has run. So for Alessandra Biaggi, there's dozens and dozens of ads. And if you click on any individual ad, you can actually see the ad, but then, so for example, I can click here.
We are collectively, every single day, taking back our government so that it works.
You can hear the ad.
The political currency, as I always say, of our time is us. It is not dollars. It is not corporate money. It is the people, and we are more valuable than the dollars that are lining their pockets.
All right, so there you go. But then you can click on See Ad Performance, and you can actually see she spent less than $100 on this ad, and in return she received between 1,000 and 5,000 impressions. That means how many people on Facebook saw the ad. This is very, very effective, high return on investment advertising, and in my opinion, that had a lot to do with why Alessandra Biaggi was successful in this contest. All right, let me switch back, and here we go. Reason number 3 that Biaggi was successful is that she raised a lot of money nationally. She was able to play on a national stage, and she had thousands of contributors. Many of them were contributing $1, $10, small numbers of amounts of money. I pulled this clip out of the Board of Elections financial disclosures. There was money coming from Texas, from Oregon, from Florida, from Georgia, all over the country. And by opening herself up to a national audience, she was able to bring money, use the rest of the country like an ATM, and bring it back to New York and win that Senate seat, or at least win the primary. All right, so reason number 4, and you've heard me kind of allude to it, Biaggi had an amazing web and digital presence. The Facebook presence is incredible. The Instagram presence is incredible. There's always things on Twitter about what's happening with that campaign. And I want to show you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. So let me come back to my browser. And so here is an Instagram story. Watch this. Let's get some audio going here. Instagram stories, where is the sound? I mean, they must have been producing Instagram stories on a daily basis. Here she is in Pelham. Let's go back. Let's go back and go here.
Hi!
What's up?
How are you? I'm here in the Bronx canvassing with Alessandra ocasio-cortez.
Yes.
We're knocking doors, talking to voters, telling them that there is an important election on September 13th on a Thursday.
Make sure everybody knows.
And then, you know, you can kind of scroll through and see the rest of the components. They don't all do You get the idea. The point is, that is what I call contemporary 21st century campaigning and first class communicating, and that is certainly contributing to why she's been so successful in the primary. All right, so let's move on to reason number 5, and this one is a bit more nuanced. So, in my opinion, Biaggi made herself available to people that didn't vote in 2016 for redemption. After the 2016 presidential election, the left became active. 50% of white women voted for Trump, and among the balance, many of them are still seeking absolution for Hillary Clinton's defeat. But, you know, meanwhile, pro-choice activists were pushing for updated abortion laws in places like New York because it now becomes likely that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned by the Supreme Court. Legitimate issue, and that would make that procedure completely illegal in conservative states. That presented a confluence of factors that were really like a perfect weather system for Alessandra Biaggi, because she was able to leverage pro-choice issues to bring female voters into the primary, but also for the purpose of campaign fundraising outside of the district on the national stage, which is why she was very successful in fundraising. So it's interesting because both Biaggi and Klein have pledged their support for the legislation necessary to modernize certain aspects of the reproductive rights laws in New York. Nevertheless, she was able to carry that message forward and make it into a very, very successful primary election campaign vehicle. So, number 6. Alessandra Biaggi researched where the likely primary voters are, and then she went there, which I think is like election 101. If you don't know where the voters are, there's no way you're ever going to win. You got to know where the customers are, right? If you look at this map of this crazy shape of a district, the likely voters, and you know, so Look at the top left corner. That's called Riverdale, Spuyten-Duyvil, and then there's another area there called Fieldston. And in the top right corner, you've got Mount Vernon and Pelham and then City Island. Couple of things to notice here. Number one, those areas where the red arrows are, they have active indivisible groups. They are middle to upper class neighborhoods, white, New York Times readers, which is, she had an endorsement from the New York Times. So clearly these were important target areas, and they went out there and they did mailings and they walked door to door, and that's how they were able to get a tremendous number of people into these primaries who previously weren't there. So electioneering 101, know where the prospects are, and it seems that they were very successful in doing that. And I have a couple of other statistics. So in that area in the top right, which I mentioned is Pelham and Mount Vernon, which are located in Westchester County, in 2014, 1,250 ballots were cast. About half of them went to then opponent Oliver Coppell, and half of them went to Jeffrey Klein. Hang on to those numbers. In 2018, 2 election cycles later, same location, Mount Vernon and Pelham, 2,009 votes were cast. That's 759 people who voted 4 years later that weren't in the election in the prior 2 cycles. Almost 80% of those votes went to Biaggi in 2018. So they did their homework and they got their people out to vote. GOTV, there's just no question about it. Okay, so the final number 7 reason why I think that Biaggi was successful is that she leveraged political influencers in an extraordinary way. She had endorsement from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Scott Stringer, Corey Johnson. Corey Johnson is the Speaker of the New York City Council. Carolyn Maloney. Not on this picture here is Jerry Nadler, who's also a congressman. People from Westchester, people from Mount Vernon. So she reached out and did an amazing job. And every time she got one of these endorsements, there was a Facebook announcement, there was printed literature, there was a photograph on Facebook, and that's how they were able to do this. So let me just kind of cut to an example of what I'm talking about with these endorsements, because it was just extraordinary. So check this one out. Let's get the audio going here.
And we need to get Alessandra Biaggi in office.
That's right. Come out to vote if you haven't voted already. The polls are open till 9 o'clock. Get out to vote. Bring your family. Bring your friends. We need all of you. We got this. Come on, District 34. Let's go,
Biaggi! Biaggi!
All right, you kind of get the idea. Let's switch back. And, those are the 7 reasons why I think Biaggi was extraordinarily successful in this primary election season. I believe that her supporters will most certainly support a campaign to flip Republican seats, because I've got to be clear. So there were primaries against all 8 of the IDC members. 6 of them were successful. So 6 of them lost their 6 former IDC members lost their primaries. All 6 of those were progressive, left, activist-oriented candidates like Biaggi. So New York, if it's going to have a trifecta, they now need to flip some Republican seats into the Democratic column, because currently there are 63 seats in the New York State Senate, and currently Democrats do not have a numerical or a governing majority. So if all of this progressive energy is going to go anyplace, they need to find a way to get more seats so that Democrats have a numerical majority in the state Senate. And I believe that they're going to try to do that. Now, if they do that, New York will have what's called a trifecta, which means that the governor is a Democrat, the state assembly is majority Democrats, and the state Senate is majority Democrats. It's hard to predict exactly what effect that's going to have on our schools, on health care, on transportation, on taxes. But it's very clear that the IDC has been replaced with a progressive caucus. And it's part of a process that's hollowing out the center, That's happening all over the world, and I guess we'll have to see. So thanks for watching this. My name is Charlie. This is Red Blue Talk. Like, subscribe. It would be personally meaningful to me if you would click the like button. If you're watching on Twitter, give me a heart. Anything like that makes a big difference, makes my day, makes it possible for me to keep going and making more of these videos. YouTube.com/RedBlueTalk or on Twitter @RedBlueTalk. All right, thanks everybody.